My interactions with God have never been entirely normative. I like the way he says that. Through this entire chapter, the interactions are based around looking for answers. The very first verses of this chapter have the disciples asking, was this man born blind because of some sin, some wrongdoing? Is that why people suffer? Jesus answers their question because it's a good question. The Pharisees then take the man and they question him. And they question him. Up and down they question him. But their questions never get an answer. I would submit they're not good questions. I had an English teacher in grade 7. She always told me the trick is not finding the right answers. The trick is finding the right questions. The movie I showed you a little clip of, just enough to kind of really suck you in. And so when it ends, you're like, oh, I'm going to go home and watch that this afternoon. It's so good. The whole movie revolves around the detective finding the right question. After this man, and we never get his name. I would love if I had a name. It'd be making speaking about this so much easier if I could just call him John or Jake or Tom. But he's never given a name. He was the one who was born blind. And we've reached the end of the chapter. And things are reaching their climax. And he still doesn't have a name, but he has been cast out. This never feels good. Rejection never feels good. You type in rejection on YouTube, you get some crazy stuff happening. Okay? It very rarely is something pretty. When we are feeling rejected, when we are rejected, it doesn't feel good. It might be good for you. When Martin Luther was cast out and ejected and refused and cast away from the Roman Catholic Church, John Calvin says it was the best moment of his life because he was cast out from error. But that's not how Martin Luther felt. He was a man, like any of the rest of us. And when you're cast out, when the people that have been your home and your community for all of your life, this man was a monk, he lived in the church. And then he's cast out from it, he couldn't have felt good. Maybe it was good for him, but it didn't feel good. He felt like a big fat failure. This young man has been cast out of the synagogue. He's no longer welcome in the temple. All the spiritual leaders have cast him out. We think this is great. He thinks he's a big fat failure. And you can almost picture him standing outside the temple on that street. The gates are busy with people going into worship, and he's no longer welcome there. Couldn't have been a happy face. And Jesus heard about this, and he seeks him out. God loves to seek people out, particularly when they've been cast out. It can be because Jesus has been cast out himself. Before this man was cast out from the Pharisees, they had already made up their judgment on him and cast him out as well. But Jesus says, I am the shepherd, and I go out and I look for that sheep that is lost, that is no longer with the others, he's off on his own, and I search for him, and I find him. And this is a very long metaphor that Jesus uses. God has used this metaphor when he took his people out of Egypt. He says, I went down to Egypt, and I took you out with my strong arm. I went down there, and I found you. And then they went off into exile, into Babylon, and into Persia, and he says, I went there too, and I found you. And so when David in the Psalm says, there's nowhere I can hide from God, it's because he knows anywhere he has tried to hide, God has found him. Jesus says, I did not come to be served, but to seek and to save in Luke 19. And indeed, the next chapter, if you have a heading, says the Good Shepherd. And so there stands two men who have both been rejected, who have both been cast out. And Jesus asks him, do you believe in the Son of Man? This man has known judgment all his life. Everyone assumed he was born blind because of some sin. He has felt judged. The disciples took it for granted. This is why this man had to suffer. It's because some judgment placed on him by God. And then he goes into the Pharisees, and these are his trusted religious leaders, and they judge him. And so he's known nothing but judgment, and then Jesus finds him, and Jesus turns the whole thing around. And he says, you judge me. The Pharisees, when the young man got even close to suggesting it, that's when they erupted in anger and threw him out. When he started trying to figure out what they're trying to figure out through their questioning, he had to leave. Jesus initiates it and says, you judge me. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Well, he has no information. He said, who is he? I don't know. I'd like to, but I don't have the information to make the judgment. To make a judgment, you need information. This morning I got myself all ready. I stand in front of my wife and I'm ready for the judgment. Am I allowed to go outside? She says, well, yeah, you're fine. I can go out. She has to take a look at me. Have I done something terribly wrong? Okay, because I get dressed in the closet with the lights turned off. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay. I do my own ironing as an experimental kind of thing. Can I actually work this? Okay, so I end up with strange creases. I have blue shirts with red pants, a tie that's this long. I do strange things. Men do that. It's not my fault. But she needs the information. She has to stop what she's doing for a moment, take a look, and then go, okay. And then when we got to church, she took another look and said, I should have gave you a haircut. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, it's getting a little long. I can't see it because I'm blind to it. I could have hair down to my shoulders, okay. Yes, you can picture that. Hair down to my shoulders. And I thought, it looks fine, it's good. I come back from camp and the beard's out to here. I think I look great. You look fabulous, man. Look at that beard. I think I look great because I can't see it. She stops what she's doing. She takes a look. She has the information. Then she can make a judgment. This man says, I'd love to make a judgment. I've never had an opportunity to do that, but I need the information. And so Jesus gives him that capacity for information. He says, let me tell you. He is the one who healed you. He is the one who is powerful to change your life, to make you whole. And he is standing right in front of you. Jesus gives us the capacity to make judgment. Most of my pastoral counseling is, Pastor Sam, how do I know what God wants me to do in my life? And you think it's mostly senior high kids wondering what university to go to, but it's not. I've had 85-year-old ladies ask me, Pastor Sam, what do I do with my life? I'm like, what do you do with your life? You pass the cookies. Like, I don't know. All of us want to know, why couldn't God just write it out for me? Here's 21 easy steps for your life. And click, click, click. And I just do them all, and my life will be beautiful. It'll be great, and I'll be a happy man. How come God has to let me figure this out? Why does that have to be so hard? how do I make these decisions? The first thing Jesus does is he gives us the capacity to make these decisions. And now, it might not be the most comfortable thing in the world, because you're like, if I make a mistake, it's $20,000 of student loans. That's not comfortable. But you have that capacity. That's why he gives you those decisions to make. And we never feel ready. I never felt ready to go to school after high school. I had no idea what university or school to go to. I was not ready to be married. I was not ready to be a father for the first time. I was not ready to be a father for the second time. Everything we do, God gives us that capacity. We don't necessarily have the feeling for it, but the capacity's there. The other thing he does is he gives this man the authority. This man doesn't immediately recognize it, but God incarnate in flesh is asking him to judge him. God is saying, judge me. What do you make of me? He did the same thing to Moses. Did the same thing to David. Does the same thing to Peter. Does the same thing to the Ephesians. Does the same thing to us. And this is something that is unique because we don't like to be judged. Getting judged is something very threatening because we become very vulnerable. We make the other person's judgment of us valuable. It's scary to be judged. It is a little scary to stand before your wife and say, am I okay? Because she could say, no, you're not. I know what you said to me last night. I'm like, I don't know. But to stand there and have that power to make a judgment upon God means a really big risk. To open yourself up to judgment means to be vulnerable. And I have been learning the power of vulnerability. When we don't make ourselves vulnerable, we protect ourselves. We guard ourselves. We insulate ourselves. But when we do that, we deaden not only the bad emotions, but the good emotions too. And so, yes, you are protected from criticism and being rejected. You're protected from negative feelings. But you're also protected from joy, from love, and from hope. Jesus opens himself up to all of it in its fullness. And he says, do you believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe in me? The man responds affirmatively. He said, Lord, I believe. And he worships him. He believes in far more than just a man. He believes Jesus to be something more, something greater, someone who can make him, rather than a victim, can make him someone who is able to take a hold of his life and make decisions for himself and feel empowered and feel free. Well, the Pharisees overhear it. They overhear what Jesus is saying, that Jesus then gives his judgment. And he confirms this man in his, you have judged well. You have made a good choice. I affirm what you say. I am the Son of Man. You believe in me? Wonderful. I welcome that judgment. And so those who do not see, I came so they could see. And those who claim they can see, I make them blind. The Pharisees overhear it. And the truth of Jesus' words are immediately confirmed. Truth doesn't have to force itself. Truth never has to be a bully. Truth doesn't have to pound itself into your life. It naturally on its own confirms itself that it is true. You can fight it. And we do this from time to time. We're like, do you know what? I can't accept this. And you refuse it. You push it back. And it just keeps coming to the front. We've done this. I've done this. You say, no. I refuse it. And you push it back again. Sure enough, it comes back again. Each time it comes back, it's just a little bit bigger and in your face. And it makes you more angry. And you're like, no. And you push it back again. But truth doesn't need to bludgeon you to death. It just simply is, and it can't be resisted. And so Jesus is the one who is judged, and the one who judges both. And his judgment confirms our judgment. Both the man who was born blind, we still don't have his name, and the Pharisees have made their judgments. We all make judgments. Some of you picked black this morning. There's a lot of black. People love to wear black. It's slimming. Okay, you've made your judgment. Okay, I tell my wife, don't wear black. It's not a funeral. Okay. Wear happy colors. Cheer me up. Her mom got me a pink tie. We make judgments. We all do. The judgment that Jesus makes confirms all of those judgments and confirms the authority and the capacity to make those judgments. He doesn't tell the Pharisees, you can't judge. Who are you? Stop judging. He says, no, your judgment is confirmed. My judgment confirms your judgment, and my judgment confirms your judgment that you think you can see. But I'm sorry, you know. The truth is you're terribly blind, and your guilt remains. And the man who claimed, I can't see anything, I wish someone would tell me. Jesus says, I make you to see. And you see correctly. You see me as I am. We have a lot of big decisions to make. Next couple of months, our high school seniors will be deciding what universities to apply to. University students are deciding what careers to move into. Some of you are engaged. Some of you are pregnant. Some of you have kids. Some of you are working on other things. Some of you are working on getting closer to retirement. Sorry, I should look at this side because this side's like, what are you talking about? You guys are not that much closer to retirement, but it's there. We're doing our due diligence. We're investing for the future, whatever that looks like, because we're making judgments. We have big decisions ahead of us. Do I stay here? Do I move to a nice house? Should I buy a car? How old is my car? Big decisions. But as a church, we make decisions too. Henry's been talking about the building campaign. How do we make decisions about the numbers that come out, like $8 million building, $14 million building? How do you make that kind of decision? It's staggering. You get weak in the knees. You're like, who wants to go to that meeting? Not me. Let's go to McDonald's. I can choose a Big Mac. That's $7. Making those kinds of decisions as a church is daunting. It's easy to be fearful. Jesus says you have the capacity to do it, and you have the authority to do it. You don't need to be afraid, because my judgment confirms your judgment. How do we know God's going to confirm our judgment, whatever our judgment is, concerning a building campaign, or a church budget, or having children? It's simple. all things work together for the good of those whom he loves. He's confirming it because he's working his good through it.